Mumbai's Mukesh Mills, said to be one of the most haunted places in the city. It was supposed to be just a thrilling night for Ayan and his friends, a little adventure fueled by curiosity and the thrill of the unknown. They had all heard stories about Mumbai's Mukesh Mills, stories of shadows moving on their own. Mysterious whispers and inexplicable chills had all but sealed its reputation as a place no one wanted to visit after dark. But for Ayan and his friends, it was the perfect dare. As they approached the entrance to Mukesh Mills, an eerie silence filled the air. The gates were rusted and covered in dust, looking as though no one had passed through in years. But to their surprise, the gates were unlocked, as if someone or something was waiting for them. The dark outline of the abandoned factory loomed ahead, its crumbling walls and broken windows casting strange shadows in the dim moonlight. A cold wind swept through the air, sending a chill down their spines as they took their first steps inside. The moment Ayan set foot within the grounds, he felt something was off. The air seemed different, heavy with the scent of old, burnt wood mixed with something he couldn't identify, almost like decay. His friends laughed, making light of the situation, trying to cover their own nerves, but Ayan couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. Every step felt like they were trespassing into something they shouldn't disturb. They entered a large hall where the factory's machinery once worked tirelessly. Now, all that was left were piles of rusted metal, broken down machines, and scattered debris. Ayan noticed footprints in the dust, fresh ones, leading up to an old rickety chair in the corner. It looked as though someone had just been sitting there, watching them from the shadows. He gestured for his friends to be quiet as they moved toward it, but as they got closer, the temperature dropped. The air around them felt thick, like it was pressing down on them. Vikram, one of Ayan's friends, tried to break the tension with a joke. "Maybe the ghosts are just welcoming us." He laughed, his voice echoing through the empty hall. But as soon as he said it, a loud noise erupted from behind them, a metallic clang, as though something had been thrown to the ground with force. They all spun around, their laughter instantly fading, eyes wide with fear. They looked around, trying to rationalize the noise. "It's just an old building," Vikram muttered, trying to convince himself as much as the others. But before he could finish, a faint, unsettling laughter filled the room. It was soft, barely a whisper, yet it felt as though it was coming from all directions, echoing off the crumbling walls. Everyone fell silent, frozen in place, each one feeling the weight of the invisible eyes that seemed to be watching them from every shadow. Ayan's heart raced as he whispered to his friends, "Let's get out of here. Something's not right." They nodded in agreement and turned toward the exit. But as they moved, Ayan caught sight of something that made his blood run cold, a dark shadow standing near one of the broken windows watching them silently. It didn't move. It didn't flinch. It just stood there, staring, as if warning them not to come any closer. Just then, Vikram's phone buzzed in his pocket. He pulled it out, but what he saw made his face go pale. It was a message, "Don't try to leave." There was no name, no number, just those words, stark and ominous on his screen. He quickly tried to turn off his phone, but it wouldn't respond. The screen flickered, and he realized it was as if someone else was in control, an unseen force operating his device. Panic set in as they tried to find a way out, but just as they reached the main doors, they found them locked tight. Ayan tried pulling the door, pushing it, but it wouldn't budge. It was as though something on the other side was holding it shut, trapping them inside. They turned back, desperately looking for another exit, but all they saw were the dark, endless shadows stretching through the hall. As they moved back into the hall, the temperature dropped even further, and they noticed more shadows moving along the walls. At first they thought it was their own, cast by the dim moonlight filtering through the cracks, but then they realized these shadows weren't following them. They were circling them, forming a sinister ring, closing in. Suddenly, Ayan felt something cold touch his shoulder. He turned, heart hammering, but there was nothing there. He tried to calm himself, but then he felt it again, this time, a hand brushing across his arm, icy and unnatural. The shadows seemed to pulse and shift, and a soft rhythmic chant began to echo through the mill, as if dozens of unseen voices were chanting in a language he couldn't understand. Ayan's vision blurred, and he felt his body grow weak, as though something was draining his strength. The whispers grew louder, filling his mind, blending into one voice that seemed to come from all directions, wrapping around him like a suffocating fog. "You should not have come here," it whispered, the words thick and cold, sinking into his skin. Just as Ayan thought he would pass out, he saw his friends grabbing him, pulling him toward an emergency exit they'd found. Somehow the door opened, and they stumbled out into the cold night air, gasping for breath. They didn't stop running until they reached their car, hearts pounding, legs shaking. They all piled in, and Vikram started the engine, speeding away from the mill. As they drove off, Ayan dared to look back one last time. There, standing at the gates of Mukesh Mills, was a shadowy figure, watching them with a sinister stillness. Its eyes gleamed in the darkness, and for a brief moment, Ayan felt as though they'd taken something with them, an unseen presence that had latched onto him in the darkness. In the days that followed, Ayan felt strange. At night, he would wake up to the feeling of cold hands pressing down on his chest, immobilizing him. In the mirror, he'd catch glimpses of shadows behind him, disappearing as soon as he turned. The whispers returned, soft at first, just a faint echo at the edge of his mind, but every night they grew louder, filling his room, filling his dreams with visions of the mill and its dark, haunting eyes. It wasn't just a night of thrill anymore. It had become a haunting that would follow him forever.